Hey everyone, welcome to Kempner Sports. My name is Rev Trev, and if you want to contend and compete and win a championship, a fantasy football championship, I'm telling you, you got to listen to these top 10 rankings of mine for 2023. This is going to be the first video of my top 10 series, and you got to figure out your top 10 in each category. In fact, you need more of that. You need to do your top 20. Some positions you need to do your top 30, top 40. So I'm going to share with you my top 10, and I'm looking forward to that. But before I do that, I want to encourage you, hit that like and subscribe so you don't miss the other top 10 rankings. Also, I have a question regarding fantasy football rankings. Why do they mostly look the same? You go to sites and they're so similar. Every single year, the experts, right? They seem to have this consensus, and it's not that they sit in the same room and do all their rankings. I know that ESPN actually have analysts that all sit in the same room, and they have this big conversation of what they think, and then from that they form a list. And a lot of those guys have different opinions, but at the end of the day, most of the rankings look very similar. And why is that? Because they're not all accurate. In fact, we know it's sports, so there's no, it's just educated guessing, right? But is the metrics wrong? Maybe. Maybe they just can't predict the future. That's possible too. But when it comes to educated guessing, there are some things that you can help and say, these guys have the best shots at producing again this series, or this guy is going to emerge. And it sounds like everyone has it right, but then you get into the season and it's totally different. I mean, some are similar, but come on. It makes no sense why have you ever thought about this? Think about it for a moment. Why are all the lists so similar? Okay, now, of course, injuries affect this list. For example, Keenan Allen, right? One of the best route runners in the entire NFL. Only played 10 games last year. Really affect his fantasy production, obviously. But they also are missing their left tackle and Slater. And Herbert went from quarterback number 2 down to number 10. So that just affects Keenan Allen's value. It's not all about the wide receiver. It's always linked to the quarterback. It's always linked to the O-line. It's always linked to what the team is doing. So things matter. For example, Mike Evans, okay, we'll just use him as another example, who was drafted very high last season, but nobody knew that Tampa Bay and Tom Brady was going to fall off a cliff, right? So Evans still ended the season as wide receiver 16, even though he was being selected as wide receiver 8 in a lot of drafts. So, but here's my top 10 list, and if you're going to be surprised on how some are super high and others are super low. Well, we're going to start with our number one guy. If you haven't hit that like and subscribe, please do. Number one wide receiver this season is no surprise to me, and probably no surprise to you, but I'm going with Justin Jefferson. Now, I know I'm a Packers fan, but when I see talent, I see talent. I think he has emerged as the number one overall wide receiver, and a lot of people are going wide receiver first, so he's also turning into the number one overall pick. And I know it's arguable, but when you factor in his age, his talent, the pace that he's on, his stats, and Kirk Cousins as his quarterback, who just continually puts up decent numbers, my conclusion is Justin Jefferson is number one. Now, have you been watching The Quarterback on Netflix? That is a great series. Watch that series and see how many times Kirk Cousins says the word Jefferson or JJ. It talks about him so much. We were planning on going to JJ here. Here's this route plan for Jefferson. It's absolutely insane. But also picking up Hawkinson and Addison there is big. I think it helps JJ because I think Jefferson gets 2,000 yards. Breaks the 2,000 yards, and he had 128 receptions last year, 1,800 yards receiving. Like, he is a monster. He's amazing. So that's my number one. Now, my number two is actually not even my number two, but we have to slot him in here. But he's what I consider 1B. It is Cooper Kupp. Many of you have Jamar Chase here, and that's the consensus rankings. But I don't get how people have forgotten about Cooper Kupp. Okay. He had a monster start to the season until he had season-ending surgery in week 10. Cooper Kupp has been dominant for the last number of years. What you need to think about when you think about Cooper Kupp is it's CMC in a wide receiver's body, because that's how much he can dominate. And don't forget and don't sleep on Cooper Kupp, okay? So if you come up to me and say, Trev, I've got Cooper Kupp as my number one, I can't fault you for that. In fact, you might even be right. You know, you might, if that's the guy you're targeting, but I think he's too low in going in drafts. He could be the number one overall wide receiver, the number one player in fantasy. I think it's a very, very valid ranking. My concerns, as everyone's concerns, are the same. His health and Stafford's health. If he can, both those guys can play healthy football, he has a shot to be number 2 or number 1 in all of fantasy. Now, number 3, you know who it's going to be, right? No, you don't. It's Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill is so amazing. He is Speedy Gonzalez. He is dynamic. He's a difference maker. If Tua stays healthy, I easily could be number 3 wide receiver, and I believe that that's what's going to happen. He's talented. He's super fast. He's a difference maker. Last season, Tyreek, get this, was wide receiver number 2. Did you know that? Did you know that? So why isn't he getting more love? Because, I don't know, he had 119 receptions last season. Like, him and Jefferson were unbelievable. Now, number 4 is Jamar Chase. No, it's not. It's my boy, Devonte Adams. Still sad he's gone from Green Bay. Most of you are going to be like, what are you talking about? How is Chase not in your top 4? Well, the reason why, I'll tell you in a minute. Devonte Adams, I don't know, this just in, he's super elite. Many of you are going to say there's no way with Jimmy G that Adams can be top 4. Now, did you know that last year, points per game average, Devonte was third? Third, people. Listen, his 2 quarterbacks were Derek Carr and Jared Stidham, right? And listen, that is crazy. And he was third. In the last 2 games with Jared Stidham at quarterback, he had 226 yards, receiving 20 targets and 2 touchdowns. I know that Jimmy G is a better quarterback than Jared Stidham. So Jarrett Stidham. So I think he's as close to Derek Carr. Okay, so Devonte is driven for success. He wants to be known as the best wide receiver in the NFL, and so it's just crazy that people have forgotten that he was number 3. And that no matter what quarterback he has, he is productive. Okay, so now, of course, number 5, Jamar Chase. Now, you guys are like, why in the world would I have Jamar Chase at number 5? That's way too low. Because unlike the 4 other guys, he's got talent that surrounds him in Cincinnati. I think T. Higgins, who's a very, very excellent wide receiver, and Tyler Boyd are great too, and there's too many mouths to feed. So I understand, like, I think Chase is elite, so don't get me wrong. His talent is there. His situation, even though he has great chemistry with Joe Burrow, they went to university together, the other wide receivers get open as well, and it takes away from Jamar Chase. And last year, Chase, a lot of people, I don't know, it's like people have forgotten, he struggled last year. I know he only played 12 games, but Jamar was inconsistent. If you are a Jamar owner, you know what I'm talking about here. Points per game, Jamar Chase was number 6. Number 6, guys. So my fifth overall ranking is not unrealistic. I've seen people taking Chase as the number 1 wide receiver, the number 1 person coming off the board. I think that's crazy. I mean, that's your team. Do whatever you want. You can be wrong if you want. Go for it if you want. I think there's 4 better wide receivers this year than Jamar Chase. Never mind the first overall pick. So, number 6, let's keep moving on, is Stefan Diggs. This guy has been the method of consistency. My goodness, he's good. Might be one of the safest picks in the draft for you. Josh Allen's favorite target, just continues to produce year after year. And I don't know what's not to like when it comes to Stefan Diggs. In his 3 years, okay, listen to this. In his 3 years with Josh Allen, he's averaged 161 targets, 113 receptions, 1,405 yards, and 9.6 touchdowns per season. He is Mr. Consistency with an elite quarterback who loves to throw him the ball and loves to focus on Diggs. Okay, so that's my number 6. Number 7 from the Cowboys, CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb is coming to his own. I think he's only 24 years old. He had a fantastic year, and with a healthy Dak, I think he has an excellent shot at exceeding his production from last season, which he had a very good year. Okay, I believe his touchdowns go up to 11, yards go up to 1,500. He had 156 targets last season. That was more than Diggs, and that also was fourth of all the wide receivers in the NFL. The Cowboys plan to get the ball to CeeDee Lamb and want the ball in his hands. Okay, so number 8 is someone who you may be surprised or maybe not. It's Garrett Wilson. Listen, this guy, I don't know what there's not to like about Garrett Wilson and his quarterback situation. Like, Garrett Wilson averaged 17.3 fantasy points per game without Zach Wilson. That would have made him wide receiver 9 last year. His upgrade to quarterback is going to help him. He had 147 targets, 83 catches, 1,100 yards receiving, but only 4 touchdowns. And I believe his catches, receiving yards, and touchdowns go up with Rodgers. If we've learned anything from Aaron Rodgers, he falls in love with certain receivers, and he always looks their way. He looked for Devonte Adams over and over and over again, threw it to him in double coverage. It didn't matter because he trusted him. I believe that he's going to do the same thing with Garrett Wilson, and that's why I have him at number 8. Number 9 is A.J. Brown. Many of you might think I have A.J. Brown too low, that I'm nuts on that. But I love A.J. Brown. I love his talent. I love his skill set. He's elite, okay? But I don't think he needs to be great for the Eagles to be great. With the emergence of Devonte Smith and Goddard now that's back healthy, it shows that they can get open as well. And also Hurts, I don't know if you know this, but this just in, he loves to run the football. In fact, he loves to run the football when it's in the red zone. He loves to get those rushing touchdowns. So Jalen Hurts not only has other weapons, he is a weapon himself, and he loves to rush. So I think it just diminishes his production. Not that he's not an elite wide receiver. Also getting Swift and Penny out of the backfield who can catch balls as well also drops him down a few spots. So I'm not taking A.J. Brown until my 9th overall wide receiver. Now, number 10 of 10 is Amon-Ra St. Brown from the Detroit Lions. I think this kid is special. He's the number 1 option there. And Jameson Williams is suspended for the first 6 games of the season. So don't sleep on Amon-Ra St. Brown. Goff is more adequate and can get the ball to him consistently. Last year, he had 106 receptions. He had 146 targets, guys. Did you know that? That's insane. Now, he only had 6 touchdowns. I think he scores more touchdowns this year, and that's why I believe that he will be top 10. So I would love to hear what your top 10 list is. Please post it in the comments what your top 10 list is, because I would love to see that. And I hope you have a great season. Again, if you want to compete and contend and win a championship, I think you should follow my top 10 this year. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you later. Go win a championship, baby.